Dr. Penny Brightstar wasn't expecting to solve one of humanity's greatest mysteries while browsing through ancient folklore databases at 3 a.m., opped up on her seventh cup of coffee. But there she was, cross-referencing medieval changeling stories with modern maternal behavior patterns, when everything clicked. Computer, pull up global statistics on mothers checking on sleeping babies, she called out, accidentally spraying coffee across her holoscreen. The display flickered, showing a predictable pattern. 99.9% of human mothers compulsively checked on their sleeping infants multiple times per night, regardless of culture, time period, or how many baby monitors they owned. Now overlay that with historical reports of shape-shifting incidents. The new data settled into place like the last piece of a puzzle nobody knew they were solving. Penny sat back in her chair, running her hands through her perpetually disheveled hair. Well, that explains a lot. The pattern was obvious once you knew what to look for. Every major civilization had stories about creatures stealing and replacing babies. Changelings, they were called in Europe. Different names elsewhere, same concept. Most xenobiologists had written it off as cultural paranoia or primitive attempts to explain sudden changes in infant behavior. Penny knew better now. The stories weren't myths, they were warnings. Computer, access the xenological archives. Search for species capable of complete biological mimicry. The list was mercifully short. Most shapeshifters in the galaxy were about as convincing as a kid wearing a bedsheet ghost costume. But one entry caught her eye: the Morphlings. Ancient, elusive, and really bad at keeping records. Their earliest confirmed contact with Earth was, well, that was interesting, right around the same time the first changeling stories appeared. And their documented attempts at infiltrating other species had one consistent flaw: they could never quite nail down infant behavior patterns. Penny started laughing. Not the polite kind of laugh you use in professional settings, but the kind that says, I just discovered something absolutely ridiculous and slightly terrifying. The Morphlings had spent millennia trying to infiltrate humanity by replacing babies. And they would have succeeded, except for one tiny detail they couldn't have predicted: human mothers developed an instinctive ability to detect even the slightest irregularity in their children's behavior. All those midnight checks weren't just paranoia or overprotective instincts. They were an evolutionary defense mechanism. A changeling detection system built into human DNA, refined over thousands of years of alien attempted infiltration. Computer, start recording. Scientific log, Dr. Penny Brightstar, xenobiology department. She took a deep breath, trying to sound professional despite running on caffeine and disbelief. I believe I have discovered why human mothers compulsively check on their sleeping infants. And I'm pretty sure this is going to either win me a Nobel Prize or get me committed to a psychiatric facility. Possibly both. She spent the next hour documenting her findings, correlating data points, and trying to figure out how to present this to the Interstellar Security Council without sounding completely unhinged. The evidence was solid, but saying, hey, turns out all those fairy tales were actually about aliens, and mom instincts are actually a sophisticated alien detection system, wasn't exactly the kind of thing that went over well in professional circles. As she finished her report, Penny glanced at the small hologram on her desk, a picture of her own mother, who had checked on her every single night until she left for university. She'd always thought it was sweet, if a bit excessive. Thanks, Mom, she murmured. Guess you were making sure I hadn't been replaced by a shape-shifting alien impersonator. That's actually kind of badass. The sun was rising by the time she finished her report. Tomorrow would bring skepticism, demands for proof, and probably a lot of awkward conversations with military officials. But for now, Doctor. Penny Brightstar sat back and smiled, knowing she'd just changed the way humanity would view motherhood forever. And somewhere in the galaxy, a Morphling was probably very annoyed that their species' greatest infiltration failure had finally been exposed by a sleep-deprived xenobiologist with too much coffee in her system. The Interstellar Security Council chamber was designed to be intimidating. Towering ceiling, dramatic lighting, and the kind of acoustics that made every cough sound like a declaration of war. Penny Brightstar stood at the podium, trying not to focus on how the room's design perfectly amplified her nervous fidgeting. Let me get this straight, Commander Jack Cooper said, his perfectly pressed uniform somehow making Penny's coffee-stained lab coat feel even more disheveled. You're telling us that human mothers have been Earth's first line of defense against alien infiltration for thousands of years? That's correct, Commander. And they did this by checking on their sleeping babies. Precisely. Penny clicked to the next slide in her presentation, showing a graph that looked like someone had sneezed statistics all over it. The maternal instinct to verify their child's identity isn't just paranoia. It's an evolved defense mechanism. From the back of the room came a sound like someone trying to discreetly clear their throat while gargling marbles. This was Advisor Zorp, the Council's expert on interspecies relations. Zorp was technically a master of disguise, in the same way that a potato with googly eyes is technically an art project. This seems highly improbable, Zorp said, adjusting what was clearly a fake mustache. And I say this as someone who is definitely human and has many normal human experiences. Penny resisted the urge to point out that Zorp was currently wearing sunglasses indoors, at night, and they were upside down. Commander Cooper leaned forward. Dr. Brightstar, while your research is interesting, what exactly are you suggesting we do with this information? Well, Penny said, clicking to her next slide, I propose we establish a specialized unit. The Maternal Alert Defense Initiative, or MADI for short. You want us to weaponize mom instincts? Cooper's eyebrow rose so high it was practically seeking orbit. They're already weaponized, Commander. I'm suggesting we organize them. Zorp's hand shot up, accidentally launching their mustache into low orbit. Question. Would this, hypothetically speaking, make it harder for completely normal humans like myself to, say, acquire human infants for totally legitimate purposes? The room fell silent. Somewhere in the distance, a cricket started chirping, then thought better of it and quietly excused itself. Advisor Zorp, Penny said slowly, are you feeling all right? Never better. Just practicing my human breathing. In through the nose holes, out through the mouth hole. Totally normal stuff. Commander Cooper pinched the bridge of his nose. Dr. Brightstar, while I admit your evidence is compelling, especially given recent events, I'm not sure the Council can justify. Recent events, Penny interrupted. Classified, Cooper said quickly. Too quickly. Would these classified events happen to involve unexplained incidents in maternity wards? Babies supposedly acting strange. Mothers insisting something was wrong despite all medical tests coming back normal. Cooper's face went through several interesting expressions before settling on resignation. How did you know? I didn't. But I do now. Penny allowed herself a small smile. Commander, the Morphlings are active again, aren't they? They're making another attempt. Before Cooper could respond, Zorp stood up abruptly. This meeting is clearly going nowhere. I move that we dismiss these ridiculous accusations and go about our normal human day doing normal human things like consuming nutrients and exchanging currency for goods and services. Zorp, Cooper said wearily, your head is on backwards. Oh, Zorp twisted their head around with a sound like a rusty doorknob. Better. Actually, that was your torso. Your head still. Never mind, Cooper turned back to Penny. Doctor, I believe we need to continue this discussion in a more secure location, and perhaps with fewer obviously disguised aliens present. I take offense at that, Zorp declared, now somehow wearing 3 mustaches, none of them convincingly attached. I am departing to do human activities like watching sports teams compete for points. Yes, they attempted to storm out dramatically, but got stuck trying to push a pull door. As security politely helped Zorp figure out basic door mechanics, Cooper looked at Penny with newfound respect. Doctor, I believe we need to talk about Operation Cradle Check. Operation what now? We've been monitoring some suspicious activity in local hospitals. If you're right about this maternal detection ability, we could use your expertise. Penny gathered her materials, trying not to look too smug. Commander, I have just one question. Does your mother still check on you when you visit home? Cooper's face reddened slightly. I'm 43 years old, Doctor. That's not a no. Every single night. Setting up surveillance in a maternity ward turned out to be surprisingly complicated. For one thing, babies are terrible at keeping secrets. For another, trying to explain to hospital staff why a xenobiologist, a military commander, and what appeared to be 3 toddlers in a trench coat were hanging around the nursery led to some awkward conversations. Zorp, Penny whispered into her comm unit. You're supposed to be monitoring the north entrance, not trying to blend in with the actual babies. I am executing a perfect infiltration, Zorp's voice crackled back. No one suspects a thing. You're 6 feet tall and still wearing 3 mustaches. Precisely. When was the last time you saw a suspicious baby with 3 mustaches? Never. Therefore, I am above suspicion. Commander Cooper's voice cut in, somehow managing to sound like he was pinching the bridge of his nose over radio. Both of you quiet. We have movement in room 204. Penny turned her attention to the monitors. Mrs. Rodriguez, a new mother who had been flagged for what the hospital called excessive checking behavior, was making her way to the nursery for the 14th time that night. Subject is displaying classic maternal detection behavior, Penny narrated into her recorder. Note the purposeful stride, the slight tension in the shoulders, and the look that says, I don't care if you think I'm paranoid. Something's not right with my baby. The night nurse tried to intercept Mrs. Rodriguez with a well-meaning, your little Carlos is fine. He's sleeping peacefully, but got the kind of look that could peel paint. Nah, Mrs. Rodriguez said with the patience of someone explaining why fire is hot. That is not my Carlos. Every monitor in the security room suddenly focused on the baby in question. To most observers, it looked like a perfectly normal sleeping infant. But Mrs. Rodriguez wasn't most observers. She was a mother who had spent 9 months growing that child, and she knew something was off. Target acquired, Cooper whispered. Move in, but carefully. We don't want to. Halt, suspicious infant. Zorp kicked down the nursery door, somehow now wearing 4 mustaches and a fake beard. You have been detected by superior human disguise expert. The baby, or rather, the thing pretending to be a baby, opened its eyes. They were definitely not human eyes. They weren't even trying to be human eyes. They were more like mood rings having an existential crisis. Oh great, Penny muttered. Zorp, we talked about this. What was the plan? The plan was to be subtle, Zorp replied. And what could be more subtle than loudly announcing our presence while wearing elaborate facial hair? The fake baby took one look at the situation and decided that maintaining its cover was probably a lost cause. It shifted, stretched, and suddenly the bassinet contained what looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a disco ball. Finally, the Morphling exclaimed, Do you have any idea how hard it is to pretend to be a human infant? The constant demands for nutrition, the irregular sleep patterns, the complete lack of appreciation for complex mathematical theorems. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had seen enough sci-fi movies to know where this was going, picked up her actual baby from the next bassinet and fixed the alien with a look that could have frozen hell. Where exactly were you planning to take my son? The Morphling had the decency to look embarrassed, which for their species meant turning a slightly more apologetic shade of sparkly. We just wanted to study human child rearing practices. Do you have any idea how many infiltration attempts have failed because we can't figure out how human babies work? All of them, Penny chimed in helpfully. You've failed all of them. Exactly. It's embarrassing. We're supposed to be master shapeshifters, but we can't fool a sleep-deprived human female with nothing but natural instincts and sleep deprivation. Cooper stepped forward, weapon drawn. You're under arrest for attempted kidnapping, illegal shapeshifting, and violation of interstellar child protection laws. Also crimes against fashion, Zorp added, now somehow wearing 5 mustaches arranged in a star pattern. No truly suspicious being would wear this many false facial hairs. The Morphling looked at Zorp, then at Cooper, then at Penny. Is he serious? We try not to ask, Penny replied. Now, are you going to come quietly, or do we need to call in more mothers? Because Mrs. Rodriguez here isn't the only mom in this ward, and I'm pretty sure they're all awake and cranky. The Morphling quickly shifted into something approximating a surrender pose. No need for that, we know when we're beaten. But this isn't over. The Morphling Empire has been trying to understand human infants for millennia, and we won't stop until... Mrs. Rodriguez cleared her throat. The kind of throat clearing that suggested the next sound might be considerably less polite. ... until we find a legal and ethical way to study human child development, the Morphling finished quickly. Perhaps through authorized research channels. Much better, Mrs. Rodriguez said, then turned to Penny. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on my actual baby, who has been absolutely perfect this whole time and deserves extra cuddles. As security led the Morphling away, Cooper turned to Penny. I guess this confirms your theory, Doctor. Human mothers really do have an innate ability to detect imposters. Indeed, Penny replied, though I have to wonder. Zorp, why exactly are you so bad at disguises when you're supposed to be a master of infiltration? Zorp adjusted their collection of facial hair, which had somehow gained a sixth mustache during the excitement. Who says I'm bad at disguises? Perhaps this is exactly what I want you to think. Perhaps this is all part of an elaborate. Oh, one of my mustaches is on fire. That's not even. How did you? Never mind, Penny made a note in her tablet. I think it's time we had a serious talk about the real scope of this infiltration attempt, and maybe get Zorp some fireproof facial hair. The thing about catching a shape-shifting alien in a maternity ward is that it tends to attract attention. By morning, every news outlet in the solar system was running some variation of human moms vs alien imposters, the truth behind those 3 a.m. baby checks. Penny sat in her office, watching the headlines scroll past on her holoscreen while Commander Cooper paced back and forth with military precision. Each turn was exactly 3 steps, performed with such exactness that you could calibrate atomic clocks to it. This is a diplomatic nightmare, Cooper said, executing another perfect turn. The Morphling Empire is demanding the release of their cultural research specialist and threatening to release details about their previous infiltration attempts. Previous attempts, Penny perked up. They admitted there were more. Doctor, focus. We're on the brink of an interstellar incident, because we caught them trying to steal a baby for their weird behavioral study collection. Actually, Zorp interjected from where they sat in the corner, now wearing what appeared to be every fake mustache in the galaxy arranged in a complex spiral pattern. It's less of a collection and more of a comprehensive database of species-specific child-rearing techniques meant to improve our understanding of. I mean, that's what I heard. From other humans. During normal human conversations about alien infiltration tactics, Penny and Cooper stared at Zorp. What Zorp adjusted their mustache spiral. Can't a normal human being be knowledgeable about classified Morphling research protocols? Before anyone could respond to that suspiciously specific denial, the office door burst open. A figure that looked like a condensed galaxy wearing a business suit stormed in, trailing stardust and bureaucratic indignation. I am Ambassador Shimmer of the Morphling Empire, it announced, and we demand wait. Zorp, is that you? Zorp's collection of mustaches began quietly falling off one by one, each making a sad little poof sound as it hit the floor. No. I mean, who is this Zorp you speak of? I am clearly a normal human who enjoys normal human activities like watching paint achieve dryness and organizing small pieces of paper with numbers on them. The ambassador's form rippled in what might have been the alien equivalent of a facepalm. Zorp, you were supposed to be gathering intelligence discreetly. What part of don't draw attention to yourself translated to wear enough fake facial hair to disguise a small planet? I was being subtle. You were wearing 6 mustaches in a spiral. In what galaxy is that subtle? 7 mustaches, Zorp corrected, then quickly added, or so I observed, as a normal human who can count facial hair arrangements. Penny raised her hand like she was back in xenobiology class. Sorry, quick question, is this the part where we find out Zorp has been a Morphling spy this whole time? Because honestly, that would explain so much. Don't be ridiculous, Zorp said, now wearing what appeared to be a fake mustache made of other fake mustaches. Though, hypothetically, if someone were to have been gathering intelligence on human maternal instincts for the past few decades. Cooper's hand moved to his weapon. Zorp. ... They might have discovered something incredible. Zorp stood up. Their form shifting and changing until where once stood a badly disguised alien now stood. A perfectly normal-looking human woman in her 50s. You see, Zorp continued in a completely different voice. I didn't just study human mothers. I became one. And somewhere along the way, between the midnight feedings and the skinned knees and the parent-teacher conferences, I learned what we've been missing all along. Ambassador Shimmer's form rippled with interest. And what would that be? Love. You incompetent space jellyfish. Zorp, or whatever their name really was, threw up their hands in exasperation. We'd been so focused on mimicking the physical aspects of human babies that we completely missed the point. Human mothers don't check on their babies because they're looking for imposters. They check because they love them so much they can't help themselves. The room fell silent. Even Cooper stopped his military pacing. Also, Zorp added, "I make a mean chocolate chip cookie and I'm not sharing the recipe until the Empire promises to stop the whole baby replacing thing." Ambassador Shimmer looked like they were having several revelations at once. Are you saying the reason we could never successfully infiltrate human society is because we didn't understand feelings?" That Penny chimed in, "And you're really, really bad at disguises. Seriously, the mustache thing was a bit much." "I thought it looked professional," both Zorp and the ambassador shouted simultaneously, then looked at each other in embarrassed solidarity. Cooper holstered his weapon and sighed the sigh of someone who was definitely going to need to file a lot of paperwork about this. "So what happens now?" Zorp smiled a real, genuine human mom smile. Now we negotiate, and trust me, I've handled enough PTA meetings to make this work." 6 months after what the media dubbed the great mom of humanity had somehow turned their maternal instincts into their hottest interstellar export, the Interstellar Security Council's new Maternal Security Division was flooded with requests from across the galaxy. "Let me get this straight," Penny said, reviewing the latest batch of applications. "The Zentari want to hire human mothers to protect their crystalline egg clutches from imposters." Apparently, Cooper replied, "After word got out about our maternal detection abilities, everyone wants in on it. The Zentari reportedly lost 3 clutches to mimetic predators last cycle alone." They were standing in the newly established Maternal Security Division headquarters, which looked suspiciously like a comfortable living room complete with cozy chairs and endless supplies of coffee and cookies. Zorp had insisted on the design, claiming that proper mom energy requires proper mom aesthetics. Speaking of Zorp, the former spy-turned-liaison was currently leading an orientation session for new recruits, having finally embraced their talent for being obviously not human. Remember, Zorp was saying to a group of experienced mothers, "Your instincts are your superpower." Though maybe don't actually say superpower during diplomatic functions. The Vraxians are still upset about the whole Cape incident. "Do we want to know about the Cape incident?" Penny whispered to Cooper. "Trust me, the paperwork alone would give you nightmares." A holographic display showed the current deployment of what the media had dubbed professional mom consultants across the galaxy. Green dots indicated successful detection of imposters, of which there were many. It turned out that once you told the universe that human mothers could spot fakes, every species with shape-shifting predators wanted to hire them. The Morphling Empire's application for cultural exchange programs has been approved, Cooper announced, checking his tablet. They're sending their first batch of genuine babies, actual babies, not spies to learn about human child-rearing practices. And we're sure they're genuine. We had 50 grandmothers check them. You know how grandmas are, they can spot a fake baby from 3-star systems away. Penny smiled, remembering how her own grandmother could always tell when she was trying to pass off store-bought cookies as homemade. Have we figured out exactly how this detection ability works yet? The science team has some theories, Cooper said, pulling up another report. Something about pattern recognition combined with emotional intelligence and what they're calling mom gut feelings, though personally, I think it's just that moms have seen every trick in the book and aren't having any of it. Just then, Mrs. Rodriguez, now the head of field training, walked in with her son Carlos, who was holding what appeared to be a stuffed animal that was trying very hard not to look alive. "And this," she was saying to a group of alien observers, "is why you always check the toys too. Mr. Snuggles here thought he could sneak in by pretending to be a teddy bear. Didn't you, Mr. Snuggles?" The toy shifted apologetically into a small, embarrassed-looking morphling. "How do you always know?" "Honey, I'm a mom. I know when someone's been in the cookie jar. I know when someone hasn't done their homework. And I definitely know when someone's trying to pass themselves off as my son's favorite teddy bear. The real Mr. Snuggles has a loose thread on his left ear and a spaghetti stain from last Tuesday." The observers took furious notes, while the morphlings slumped in defeat. "Don't look so down," Mrs. Rodriguez said kindly. "You're getting better. Last time you tried to replace his tablet computer. As if any mum wouldn't notice their kid suddenly being interested in quantum physics instead of cartoon videos." Penny watched this exchange with growing amusement. "You know what the best part is? The morphlings are actually learning." They're not trying to infiltrate anymore, they're genuinely trying to understand how human parents do it. And how do human parents do it? Cooper asked. Oh, that's the real secret, Zorp cut in, having finished their orientation session. It's not about the detection abilities at all. It's about the love. The constant checking, the worry, the knowing every little detail about your child. That's all just love in action. That's surprisingly profound, Zorp. Thank you. I also made cookies. They're shaped like little UFOs, but don't worry, I checked to make sure none of them are actual tiny spaceships this time. As if to demonstrate the continued need for maternal vigilance, one of the cookies suddenly sprouted tiny legs and tried to scurry away. Mrs. Rodriguez caught it without even looking. Nice try, she said to the cookie-shaped morphling. But a real cookie doesn't try to evolve when you're not looking. 1 year after the Great Mom-Off, Dr. Penny Brightstar sat in her office at the Maternal Security Division, reviewing the latest statistics. The numbers were impressive: infiltration attempts down 99%, successful cross-species childcare exchanges up 500%, and cookie consumption up 1000% thanks largely to Zorp's stress baking during diplomatic meetings. You know, she said to Cooper, who was actually sitting down for once instead of performing his usual military pacing. When I first discovered this, I thought I'd be laughed out of academia. Instead, we've revolutionized interstellar security with mom power. Speaking of which, Cooper replied, checking his phone, my mother just texted. She wants to know why I haven't called this week and quote, don't think I won't fly my ship to your sector for a surprise visit, young man. Your mother has a ship. She's the admiral of the 7th Fleet now. Turns out the ability to spot imposters is really useful in deep space combat. Zorp burst into the office, wearing what appeared to be a world's best mom t-shirt in 7 different languages. Emergency in Sector 4. The Vraxians are requesting immediate maternal assistance. What happened? Penny was already reaching for her emergency kit, which consisted mainly of band-aids, snacks, and a portable detector for unauthorized shapeshifting. Their royal clutch is hatching, and they're worried about egg-mimicking predators. They specifically requested Mrs. Rodriguez. Apparently her reputation for catching fake babies has spread to the Andromeda Galaxy. I'm already on it, Mrs. Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom. She had somehow known she'd be needed before anyone called her. And yes, I packed extra cookies. The non-shape-shifting kind. Penny couldn't help but smile. A year ago, she'd been a sleep-deprived xenobiologist making a crazy connection in ancient folklore. Now she was running an organization that had turned humanity's most basic instinct, maternal protection, into their greatest interstellar asset. Oh, by the way, Zorp added. Bay. The Morphling Empire sent their quarterly report. Their new Learn from Human Moms program is going wonderfully. Though they did have one slight incident where a young Morphling got so into their role as a human child that they actually forgot they were a shapeshifter. The human mom they were. Studying adopted them on the spot. You're kidding, Cooper said. No. Speaking of which, Zorp shifted back into their human mom form. Remember how I said I became a mother during my long-term mission on Earth? Well, funny story. Cooper's eyes widened. No. Yes. Surprise, sweetie. I know we should have had this conversation earlier, but you were so busy with your military career, and I was technically spying on humanity, and you know how these things get awkward. You're my mother. Did you really think your real mother would check on you every night well into your 40s without having some sort of enhanced detection abilities? Please, I raised you better than to be that unobservant. Penny watched as Cooper went through all 5 stages of grief in about 10 seconds before settling on acceptance. Actually, he said finally, this explains a lot. Like why our family photos sometimes show you with different numbers of eyes depending on the lighting. I was still learning. And you try maintaining perfect human form during family vacation photos. The stress alone is enough to make anyone sprout an extra appendage or 2. The intercom crackled again with Mrs. Rodriguez's voice. If the family reunion is over, we have 3 more requests for maternal security consultations, a delegation of Zentari crystal mothers wanting to learn human lullabies, and someone trying to sneak into the cookie jar in the break room disguised as a coffee mug. On it, Zorp called back. Though I have to say, their disguise game is getting sloppy. Everyone knows coffee mugs don't usually try to whistle innocently. As Penny watched Cooper trying to process his newfound family history while Zorp fussed over his uniform collar, she made a mental note in her research log. Final observation in the end, it wasn't advanced technology, military might, or diplomatic prowess that gave humanity its edge in the galaxy. It was the simple, universal truth that you should never, ever try to fool a mom. They've seen it all, they know all your tricks, and they probably have cookies waiting for when you're ready to admit what you did. Also, note to self-check if any of my childhood toys were actually Morphling spies. That would explain what happened to Mr. Wigglesworth the rubber duck.